Welcome back to Measure and Mix. Today I have 4 brand new Dollar Tree Farmhouse coastal DIYs for you guys, but I also have 8 Farmhouse coastal DIYs that I've previously done on my channel. I thought I would combine them all together, so if you like coastal DIYs, they would all be in one spot for you. Now the 4 brand new DIYs will be at the beginning of the video, and then the 8 old ones will be towards the end, and I will have timestamps for all of them down below in the description box. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on anything new. All right, let's get started. For this DIY, I'm going to start off with a frame from a canvas from Dollar Tree. I've already removed the canvas and I'm just going to paint it white. Then I just flipped the canvas over to the back and I'm going to take some nautical rope and lay it across and just kind of measure and tie a knot at the top of the nautical rope. Then I'm going to place that nautical rope on the top of the frame and measure to the bottom of the frame and tie another knot so each of my knots touch the top and the bottom of the frame. And then I'm going to cut the excess rope and hot glue that rope down. Then I just did the same thing for the other side of the frame with the nautical rope. This DIY was inspired by something I saw on the internet when I was Googling, and I can't find it again, unfortunately, but I loved how it turned out. So next I'm going to take 3 popsicle sticks, the larger size ones, and I painted them with that Serenity Blue. I just did 1 coat of paint on the popsicle sticks and the frame, so that way a little bit of the wood would show through and it would look a little more weathered. Then I cut the popsicle sticks in half and I also cut the ends off the popsicle sticks. Now I'm going to create a little shiplap effect inside the frame. So I just took one of the popsicle sticks and hot glued it to the middle of that rope and then hot glued the rest of the popsicle sticks above and below that first one, and I just hot glued them to the rope. I used all of the popsicle sticks except for one little half there. Then I flipped everything over and used 2 smaller popsicle sticks on the back of those to secure everything. Lastly, I glued some seashells to the popsicle sticks, and that was it. For this DIY, I'm using 2 of these glass pillar candles from Dollar Tree and 1 of these willow wreaths from Dollar Tree. It's the larger size. I just previously spray painted this one with a little bit of white chalk paint because it was from a repurposed DIY that I did. So now what I'm going to do is just pull all of the branches off of the willow wreath and break them apart. And if they split in half, that's okay because I want this to look like driftwood. Now all I'm going to do is take those pieces and find which pieces I like the best, and then I'm just going to start hot gluing them to the bottom of the candle pillars. And I'm just going to glue them right next to each other. I used big and small and tall and short pieces kind of to just give a variation and hopefully make this look a little bit more like driftwood. I finished gluing all of the pieces together, kind of like a puzzle, onto the pillar candle, and once that one was finished, I just moved on to the second one and did it the same exact way. I just did that one off camera, and I think these turned out really pretty and have that coastal farmhouse look. Walking on the street when you caught my eye, something about the way you move. No, there ain't nobody like, there ain't nobody like. So lucky to be yours. And you're taking me home. This DIY, I'm going to use some florals that I had in my craft stash, and I'm going to make some fake coral that I see from like Pottery Barn or all over the place for like hundreds of dollars. So I'm going to take 2 rocks from my backyard for the base of my coral, and I'm just going to start off with the succulents and take those off the stems and then hot glue them together. And then once they're hot glued together, I just glued the bottom of them to the top of the rock with some hot glue and let that dry. With the other florals, I just popped them off of the stems and then I cut the bottoms off of some of them that I left longer, so that way they would be easier to hot glue to the top of the rock. And then some of them I just cut the tips off of and hot glued those tips to the other longer pieces of coral, so that way it looked more like coral. You can do it however you want, just play around with it. And just make it look like your own coral. Once that was finished, I just spray painted these with some white spray paint, and that was it. All right, for this DIY, I'm gonna be using some foam board, and this is just scrap that I had left over. I'm gonna draw a half circle with kind of a flat bottom and flat top, if that makes sense. And I'm gonna cut that out with my X-Acto knife. Then I just use that to trace out another one, and these are gonna be the sides of my boat. My boat measures about 11 inches long from the top of the boat sides. Then I took my foam board and I cut another long strip that was about 2.5 inches wide and 20 inches long. Then I just hot glued those two side panels to the edges of the middle of that strip. Now I'm just bringing up the ends of the strip to curve around the sides of the boat, and I'm hot gluing those pieces down to the sides of the boat, and this will become the bottom of my boat. Once those were all glued down, I needed to make a top for my boat, so I just flipped over the boat and traced out the top of it onto the foam board and cut that out with my X-Acto knife. And then I just used some hot glue and hot glued the top of that on there. And don't worry about what it looks like, because I'm going to be covering it up with all of these popsicle sticks. Well, I have a lot more. But I just cut the curved edges off and just started hot gluing them to each side of the boat in kind of like a brick pattern. And I did cut the edges to kind of be angled, so that way they would kind of curve with the boat. Now my battery did die, so here is the finished sides of the boat and what it looks like. Now unfortunately it didn't have enough popsicle sticks to do the curved edges of the boat, but I did want to cover up those sides where there was a gap. So I had enough popsicle sticks and I just cut a couple and hot glued those to each side of the boat to cover up those sides. I did have enough popsicle sticks to go ahead and cover the top of the boat, so I cut those down to size, and then I just hot glued those just all the way across the top of the boat. Unfortunately, I'm not sure how many popsicle sticks I used for this project because part of my bag was empty, but they did come from Dollar Tree and it did take quite a lot. Now I'm gonna go ahead and paint this with that Serenity Blue chalk paint, and now it's time to work on the sail. For the sail, I'm using a piece of canvas that I got from one of the canvas frames from Dollar Tree, and I just cut that diagonally in half so I had 2 triangles. Hopefully I can explain this correctly, but I need 2 triangles that face opposite like you see there, but the triangles, if you flip one over, they're different colors on the other side. So as you can see here, I lined up the side and then I just cut off the excess at the bottom to give me a little bit of a smaller triangle, so that way I'd have 2 triangles that face opposite but are the same color on both sides. Then I just took a hole punch and I hole punched into each corner of the triangle. Now I'm going to attach my triangles to just a skewer that came from Dollar Tree. I just cut the pointy tip off of it, and I'm just going to take some cotton twine and go through those holes that I hole punched and come through and tie it to the skewers. And I just used a little dab of hot glue in between tying my knots, so that way I would make sure that it was secure on that skewer and wouldn't move too much up and down and back and forth. Then I just cut the excess strings and I did the same thing to both of the triangles. Now for the other two holes on each ends of the triangles that aren't attached to the skewers, I am just gonna go ahead and use that cotton twine and tie a string onto that in just a double knot, so that way I can hold it to the boat. Now comes the next part that I did not think about, which was attaching the skewer or the sail to the boat. So it's not gonna just attach with hot glue. So what I did was I just picked a spot on the middle of the boat and I took up one of the popsicle sticks, and then in the foam I just poked a little hole and then inserted the skewer into that hole with a little bit of hot glue to secure it down. Then I took that popsicle stick that I removed and I cut that in half. That way I could refit it back on to the top of the boat. So once that was cut in half, I just hot glued it back into place, and that secured the sailboat really well. I did add just like a dab of hot glue in between those two pieces just to keep everything upright. Then I tied a knot on each end of those pieces of twine that I had left, and I hot glued those knots to the side of the boat to hold the sails up. And that was it for this DIY. I love how this cute coastal boat turned out, and you can add embellishments to it if you want. DIY, I'm going to be making a lantern, and I'm going to be using 4 of these 5x7 picture frames, but I'm not going to be using the frames. I'm actually just going to be using the glass out of the frames. So I just took them apart and kept the glass and set the frames aside. Next, I'm going to use these popsicle sticks from Dollar Tree. They're not like the jumbo ones. They are medium size, I guess. They're bigger than the regular popsicle sticks that you can get. What I'm going to do is cut the rounded edges off of each side of them, and that way each side will be straight. And then I am going to hot glue that piece to the bottom edge of the piece of glass. Then I'm going to take another popsicle stick and do the same thing to the top piece of glass. Alright, so now what I need to do is create a box for my lantern. So I need to attach the pieces of glass to each other. So what I did was added a dot of hot glue where on the edge of the piece of glass that I attached the popsicle sticks to, and I just added a dot where the popsicle sticks are on each end, and then put the other piece of glass on top of that. And then I went ahead and had a popsicle stick cut on one side and hot glued the straight edges down on the corner, if that all makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing, but there's probably a better way of doing this anyways, like probably attaching the popsicle sticks to all the pieces of glass beforehand and then attaching the glass together. I don't know. This is just how it worked out in the end for me. And it worked out well. It did stay together, so I was really happy with it. But it does look a little flimsy here, and when you first put the first 2 pieces of glass together, it is pretty flimsy. So you'll want to reinforce it a little bit in those corners with some hot glue, and then I held it up with my paint can so that way it would stay steady as I was working on the other sides. And then I just continued to work on the other sides. I attached my popsicle sticks to the bottom and top edges and cut them so that they would have straight edges. And then I just attached my pieces of glass the same way as I attached that first piece of glass, and used that paint can to hold it up steady to make sure it fit. But when I went to add the very last piece of glass to make my square, that's when it became a lot more sturdy. Now I would recommend using E6000 or super glue or stronger glue to keep this together and last a lot longer. Now that the lantern was all put together, I wanted to make a bottom for it, so I took some more popsicle sticks and lined them up across the bottom and then marked where I needed to trim off those rounded edges on both sides. After I got them all trimmed up, I went ahead and just took some hot glue and hot glued the popsicles down to the edges of the lantern to make my bottom. Next, I wanted to give this more of a weathered look, so I took some white chalk paint and I just dry brushed it onto the bottom of the lantern and then also around the outside edges as well. This is probably something I could have done before I hot glued the popsicle sticks all down, but I was kind of doing this just on a whim and figuring this out as I went along. Now I wanted to make a handle for my lantern, so I took some nautical rope from Dollar Tree and I cut a piece off, and then I just tied a simple knot on each end of the rope and then hot glued the excess of that rope that was hanging from the bottom of the knot to the inside of the lantern to make my handle. Now I realized after that I could see the hot glue through the glass from where I hot glued those popsicle sticks down to the outside of the glass, and I didn't like that look. It looked unfinished and messy. So what I did to fix that was take some more popsicle sticks and cut them down to size, and then I just gave them a coat of whitewash and hot glued them around the inside around the lantern, so that way it would cover it up. And that's something that you could do in the beginning. I just didn't think about it until the end, unfortunately. But if you thought about it in the beginning, you could definitely save yourself some time. But I really love how this turned out. It's beachy and coastal and farmhouse. For this next DIY, it was inspired by a piece of coastal decor I found on Pier 1's website. It was like a school of fish statue, and I found these fish at Dollar Tree and I thought I could kind of recreate it with them. So these fish are like a rubbery fish and they're supposed to be for like a little pool game, but they are gonna work out perfect for this project. So I went ahead and put 3 coats of white chalk paint on the front side of them. I didn't worry about the back, but you could if you wanted to. And then I took some twine and started at the mouth of the fish and started wrapping it around, and when I got to about where the gill is on the fish, I stopped and hot glued it and secured it, and then I went back to the tail of the fish and I started wrapping the top of the tail and wrapping that down to about where the scales start at on the fish. So I left the middle of the fish open, and I did that to actually 5 of the fish because the 6th fish I didn't have any more twine left. I ran out of twine. Next, to fill in the middle, I'm going to be using these smaller seashells from Dollar Tree that come in the little bottles. There are 5 different kinds that I have here. I don't know how many different kinds Dollar Tree sells, but I chose to do them in 5 different kinds of the seashells. You could do them in all one kind if you like, or just a couple different kinds, whatever you choose. But I thought it would be fun to make each of them look different. So all I did was hot glue them to the middle and just layer them on to kind of make them look like fish scales. Now to make my fish stand up, I'm going to be using these bamboo skewers from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to attach them to the back of each fish with a bunch of hot glue to keep them in place. And then I'm going to take this floral foam block from Dollar Tree and insert the skewers into that, and I'm going to stagger the fish at different heights by cutting the bamboo skewers so that way they look like they are swimming in a school. So next I needed to cover up this green floral foam. So I am going to use some of the popsicle sticks. They're the same ones I used for my lantern. And I'm just going to cut the rounded edges off and then cut these at varying lengths and hot glue them around the floral foam to make this look like an old wooden shiplap box. So it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to cover up that green floral foam, and that is what I'm doing. Then I am going to go ahead and use some white chalk paint and dry brush that on the popsicle sticks like I did for the lantern. I lost that footage unfortunately for this one, but it was the same process as I did the lantern. And I also did the skewers as well. After looking at it, I decided the skewers needed to be white also. So, but that is something that if you're recreating this, do that in the beginning so that way you can save yourself some time. After the box was finished and painted, I decided to add to the top some sand that I had already, but Dollar Tree does sell some sand, and I just added that to the top, and then I added some of the leftover seashells to it, and I think this turned out really pretty. DIY is super easy. I'm just using one of these Dollar Tree glass square candle holders and some floral foam, cutting it down to size, making sure the top of the floral foam is level with the top of the glass container. Then I took some Dollar Tree nautical rope, and starting in the middle of the floral foam, I hot glued a piece of that nautical rope down, and then I coiled it around the top of that container all the way around, and then I just finished off by wrapping the whole container in nautical rope and hot gluing it as I went along, and then I just cut off the excess rope. And then next I'm going to use some of the onion grass from Dollar Tree. I have 5 bunches here, and I'm just going to fill the center of this container up with it, and I think this turned out so cute and coastal and beachy. I think it looks really pretty with all the other decor. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure to give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, the first thing I'm gonna make is this window frame with a wreath on it. I'm gonna use 4 of these wooden picture frames from Dollar Tree. I've had these lying around for forever. I don't know if you can still find them, but any 5x7 frame will work for this. All I did was take the glass out and the paper, and now I am just removing the little prongs that hold the glass in. And then I'm just going to lay them out. I'm going to put 2 next to each other and hot glue them. And then I am going to hot glue the other 2 to the bottom 2. So I'm sure you guys have seen this before. Lots of other people have done this. So it's really easy to do. I'm just going to take some more hot glue to reinforce it. Of course, you can use E6000 or another glue to make sure it has a stronger hold. And then, of course, I'm using some popsicle sticks on the back. All I had was the red popsicle sticks, so it doesn't look super pretty on the back, but nobody's gonna see it, so that doesn't matter. And I just hot glued at the seams those popsicle sticks down to make sure that it holds. Next, all I'm going to do is give this a coat of white linen chalk paint. I actually gave it 2 coats of white linen chalk paint. And then on the second coat though, before it was completely dry, I came back with some of this retro vintage chalk paint by Deco Art. And I am just kind of brushing it and blending it with the second coat of white paint. And then I came back with my gel stain in the walnut that I always use to distress things, and I'm blending that as well to give it more of a weathered look. Now I'm going to work on the seashell wreath. I'm going to use one of these green foam wreath forms from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use 3 bags of these seashells. They have a bag of just white seashells, and then they have a bag of like kind of more of a colored seashell. I have 2 bags of the colored ones and then 1 bag of the white, so I'm just going to mix it up, and I'm just going to pick out the shells that I think fit the best and kind of just layer them on and hot glue them down to the other shells and to the wreath form. Some of the shells are smaller, so you can pick out ones to kind of fill in the gaps on the wreath. So it kind of just covers the front and the sides, and you don't need to cover the back of the wreath. And you could do this with seashells that you find from vacation, or if you live near the beach, you can collect them and do this as well. Now I'm just going to go ahead and hang the seashell wreath from the window with some burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree. I just hot glued the burlap ribbon to the back of the window and hot glued the wreath down where it touched the window. And I also did not put the glass back in the window, but you could, if you wanted to, just put some E6000 or some hot glue to hold it in place. And I love how it turned out. It looks very beachy but kind of farmhousey at the same time, and it just reminds me of the ocean and going searching for seashells on vacation. For the next project, I'm going to use one of these Seahorse signs from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to give the back of it a coat of that retro vintage chalk paint, and then I'm going to use 2.5 bags of these glass gems from Dollar Tree. They have all different colors. They have just blue ones, they have just green ones, and then they have the mixture, or they have just clear ones. So I'm using the mixture here for the Seahorse, and I am just laying them out and just kind of fitting them where I think they go best and hot gluing them down. Now, I would recommend, if you're going to do this, to use E6000 or a stronger glue, because the hot glue doesn't hold that well, but it worked for now for me. And then all I did was put a little nautical rope hanger on the back of this and hung it up, and this was super simple and easy to do. And Dollar Tree has a ton of these beachy signs, so you could do it with any of them. For this last easy, beachy, coastal decor, I'm going to be using 2 of these styrofoam balls from Dollar Tree. They come in a pack of 3. I don't know what I did with the other ball, but I am just going to use 2 of them for this project. And I am going to take some nautical rope, and I'm just going to begin at the top of the ball and coil it around and hot glue it down, and then keep wrapping the nautical rope all the way around the ball. And I'm going to be making nautical rope balls, and they're not going to be perfect, like exact, but this is just kind of my take on it. So I'm going to take the rest of the nautical rope after I get the first layer done, and I'm going to go the opposite direction and wrap 4 more rows of nautical rope and hot glue that down to the ball. And then I'm going to take the leftover nautical rope from that, and I'm going to go the other opposite direction of the ball, and I am just going to wrap 4 more rows of that and hot glue that down. And then I just took some more nautical rope and I made just a little hanger and hot glued that down, and I did the same thing to the other styrofoam ball. And this is how it turned out. I think it's cute and beachy. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to make is a lighthouse, and I'm going to use one of these planter trolleys. This is optional, I just liked mine being able to be mobile. And then I'm going to use one of these fluted green planters from Dollar Tree, and then one of these more straight planters with the bottom that comes off, and then also one of these candle holders from Dollar Tree. Now I'm going to assemble everything with some hot glue. I would recommend using E6000 for a stronger hold. All I'm going to do is place some hot glue in the bottom of the trolley and then place the green planter upside down in that trolley. And then I added some hot glue around the green planter at the top, and then place the brown planter upside down on top of the green planter. And next, all I'm doing is taking 4 Jenga blocks, and I just spaced them out and hot glued them upright along the top of the brown planter. And now I'm taking some nautical rope and cutting 4 equal pieces of that nautical rope, and then I'm just going to hot glue each piece in between each section of Jenga blocks, and it will kind of act as the railing for the lighthouse. So I only used hot glue for this whole project because I was out of E6000. I think hot glue is fine for the nautical rope parts of these projects, but I would definitely recommend using E6000 if you were going to use this outdoors, because it would hold up a lot better in the weather. Somehow I lost the footage of me putting on the nautical rope that you see there. There's 3 rows of nautical ropes right below the Jenga blocks. I just cut a piece and hot glued that around. And then all I'm doing is taking my white linen chalk paint and painting everything with, I think I did 2 coats and maybe a 3rd touch-up coat to all of this. And then you can also see that I did paint the nautical rope as well. That's a personal preference. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. And I used a little smaller brush to kind of go around and work and do the details of the top there, because it was kind of hard to do that with the bigger brush. Now what I'm doing is I'm coming back with some gel stain in the walnut. This is what I always use to kind of distress things and make things look old or weathered. And I just brushed that on, and then I came back with my little paintbrush with some white paint on it too, and then I kind of went over all of that to kind of just mellow out the brown. And then after that was all done and everything was all dry, I came back with some black chalk paint, and then I just outlined some windows onto the lighthouse and filled those in with the black chalk paint. After the windows were all finished, the only thing left to do was add the candle holder on top for the lighthouse effect, and it just rests in between the Jenga blocks. It doesn't sit all the way down on top of the pot, but I love how this turned out. It looks so pretty with the candle on it and is perfect for that nautical or coastal decor. Next item I'm going to be making is a set of paddles, and I'm going to be using 2 of these bamboo torches from Dollar Tree. I just cut the bamboo off the top there holding in the torches and took the torches out, and now I'm going to use 2 of these beach signs from Dollar Tree. They kind of look like the tags, and I just took the strings off the top there, and now I'm just going to place the signs inside of the bamboo, and there'll be 4 pieces on one side and then there'll be 4 pieces on the other side. And then all I'm doing is just cutting off the excess bamboo. They kind of just rip off easily, or you could use scissors. And now I'm just going to take some hot glue and I am just going to hot glue in between the bamboo pieces, and then also kind of on the sides there below the sign where it's holding it in. And I did this for both of the paddles that I'm making. Hot glue seemed to work perfectly fine for me with these paddles, but you could definitely use E6000 to give this a stronger hold, or if you were going to use these for outdoor decor. Now all I'm doing is taking some white linen chalk paint and I'm giving each of these 2 coats on what would be the front of my paddles, which is the back of each of the signs. It's going to be the front of my paddles, and then the front of the actual signs, which is the back of the paddles, I only put 1 coat of chalk paint because you won't see those. And then now I'm coming back with some painter's tape and I'm just taping off a line here so that way I can paint a stripe onto the paddle boards. And I'm just using the Deco Art chalk paint in the color Retro Vintage. I'll link that down below if you guys want to check it out. I love this color. And then after it was all dry, I just took the painter's tape off and then I came back with my walnut gel stain and I just stressed the paddles. I just brushed it on the edges and then all over the paddles, and then also all over the handles as well. The last thing I did to these paddles was take some nautical rope and I just hot glued it onto the top of the handle where the paddle meets the handle, and I wrapped it around about 6 times and then I just hot glued it down, and then I came down to the bottom of the handle and I did the same exact thing. I just hot glued it down and wrapped it around about 6 times as well and hot glued it to secure it back down. And I did this to the other paddle as well, and I just love how these turned out. I think that they are perfect for that nautical coastal themed decor, but I think that this would be really cute in a little kid's bedroom or a nursery if you had that nautical theme going on. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed these